going on, guys? Today I'm going to be breaking down exactly how much I've spent on all my cars and revealing the new one. Alright guys, so I wanted to do a little bit of a different video today. I do have a new vehicle, and instead of just showing you that, I thought it would be a good opportunity to go over all my vehicles and exactly how much I've spent on them. A lot of people always ask about budget. They think things cost a lot more than they usually do. If you're smart and can do a lot of work yourself, you can save a whole bunch of money. So I will go over each one, exactly how much I have invested, including the original purchase price, and then also all of the money I've spent either modifying or fixing things on the vehicle. And first up, we're going to start with my least exciting car. This is my 2000 BMW 328 Ci, and this currently has 170,000 miles on it. And this is essentially my daily driver. I use this to drive to work, and I like to drive it in bad weather so I don't have to drive my nicer cars. Of course, it doesn't work that well in the snow. It is rear-wheel drive, and the rear differential is completely open, so once you get into snow, pretty much just one wheel spins and you go nowhere. And this is really my only stock vehicle. I've managed to keep it completely stock, only fix things that needed fixing. And say what you will about BMWs, but this thing has been incredibly reliable. I've had to fix very few things over the past 4 years, and really the parts aren't that expensive either. So I think really the problem started the body style after this, which is like 2005, 2006. At that point, I think they got a lot more unreliable with way more oil leaks and coolant issues. This thing actually doesn't leak at all. The only thing I had to replace up there was the fan. And so this really has been a great daily driver. It gets about 30 miles per gallon, which is kind of crazy for something this old. And it does have the straight six, so this has the 2.8 liter M52 engine. And it really is in pretty good condition. It's really dirty right now because it's been snowing and there's salt in the roads and stuff. But there isn't many dents on the outside. It was definitely repainted at some point, but someone did a pretty nice job with it. And the inside is pretty nice as well. So it is a 5-speed manual, of course. My only real complaint is that it is extremely slow. So that does get pretty boring for a daily driver, especially if you are a car guy, to drive something this slow. That is the 328 daily. I bought this thing, again, like 4 years ago for $2,500. It had about 130,000 miles on it at the time. Since then, I've put about $500 into it in repairs that are outside of, kind of normal wear and tear stuff. So I would say I'd have about $3,000 total invested in this car. Now, next up is my Jeep. So this is a 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and this is the 4.7 V8 model. It also currently has right around 170,000 miles at this point. I've owned this the longest out of all my cars at about 6 years. And so this thing used to be my daily driver actually for a while, and it did pretty well even with these huge tires on it. The only big complaint is obviously it does not get great gas mileage with that V8. I think I average around 14 miles per gallon in this. So not ideal, especially if you have a long commute. And as far as modifications, I have a pretty simple spacer lift on this. I think it's about a 2.25 inch lift. So I don't know if you can really even see it. No, not really up there, but there's a spacer on top of the coilover in the front, and then spacers on top of the spring in the rear. So I actually modified the rear spacer to add another inch because with that lift, it looked a little too low in the back. So I did that, and now it sits exactly how I want. And I can fit these 34-inch tires. I did also do pretty extensive modification behind these wheels. I actually cut and then re-welded a piece of steel in there so that I had enough room to turn these big tires. I actually have all that on video on my channel. If you search how to fit big tires, that's exactly what I did in that section. And then outside of that spacer lift, I also did Bilstein 5100 shocks, and those shocks actually do lift it a little bit more just in the front. And then these are just pretty basic Pro Comp steel wheels that I actually bought used off Craigslist and then just repainted them, so they were really cheap. And then these are the Nitto Ridge Grappler tires. This is a 305/70/17, so it is right around 34-inch tire. I have really liked these tires because they are pretty aggressive tread, almost like a mud terrain, but they are not that loud on the road. Other than that, I did build a full exhaust. It's a 3-inch to a dual 3.5-inch. So there's the tips, I don't know how much you can see, but under there is where it goes from 3-inch, and then it splits to the dual 3.5. And then you might be wondering about all this damage. So it was sitting on the side of the road and got hit by a car. So I did fix everything mechanically. It actually needed a whole new rear end. The rear end got bent. It's a solid rear. And so I got a new one and installed that. So everything is working, functioning pretty much the right way. I just haven't fixed the body because it really hasn't been worth it. I just pulled it out enough so I could put a new taillight in there. So, you know, everything functions. But for me, I just use this thing to drive pretty much in the snow, and then I use it to haul some things, go to pick up lumber, haul around the four-wheeler, things like that. And I use it a lot when I'm cutting up firewood around the house so I can pull a trailer and pull that firewood around. So that is the Jeep. I bought this thing for about $6,000. Again, that was about 6 years ago. Since then, I've put probably about $2,000 of parts into it. So total invested for the Jeep is around $8,000. Now next up, we have the Mustang. So this is a 2006 Ford Mustang GT, obviously heavily modified. It doesn't really look like a Mustang anymore. It currently has about 100,000 miles on it. I bought it with about 92,000 miles, and I've had it about 3 years. And so this was the first car that I fully covered every modification on my YouTube channel. So you can scroll down and see every little detail that I've done to this thing. And I did actually buy this from a junkyard, so it had some decent front end damage. I did need to get the front subframe straightened, and then it was basically just getting new fenders, front bumper, and things like that. Once I did get it up and running, I did the turbo install. So I did the turbo install and everything else was completely stock. It was kind of funny. It was making 500 horsepower on the stock wheels and tires, stock height. So it was a little bit of a sleeper there for a while, but then I got to work more on the looks, so wheels and tires. I eventually did put air suspension in it, and then I worked more on the body. So I actually pushed out the stock fenders here. That's why there's a gap on the hood. So the stock fenders are pushed out. I did that just by welding tabs basically and using spacers. And then after that, I built this front bumper. So this is fully tubular steel front bumper, actually all TIG welded. And then of course the stock headlights would not fit, so I did a custom headlight setup here. These are Hella Rally lights, and then I also did some custom tint to give more of a halo look. So that's actually tint there in the center, and the regular light is the ring on the outside. And of course, since fabricating an exhaust is kind of my specialty, I've built a number of different exhausts for this. Currently it has a dual tip coming out the front right here. I do really like this setup because it comes right off the turbo and there's nothing else in between, so you can really hear the turbo spool, and I think that's pretty sweet. This is actually quieter than the other exhaust that goes out the back, but initially I did run a full 4-inch to 5-inch exhaust out the back of this, a single exit, and that thing is super loud. It sounds a lot more like throaty, deep V8 sound, but you do not hear the turbo spool. So kind of every once in a while, I take this one off and put the other one on just to switch it up. And it's kind of fun because it sounds completely different. And after I got done with the front end, I moved to the rear. So I needed to do something in the rear to match the width of the front. So these are actually stock quarter panels that I went to a junkyard and cut off another Mustang. And then I have some custom mounts at the bottom, and then the top is bolted to the regular body. So of course I had to do a lot of custom cutting and modifying to the original body to fit these. My stock quarters are completely cut up and then re-welded to give more space so that when I air out, it doesn't hit that panel inside. And a couple other smaller details. This wing was a custom design by me, and then I got it CNC cut out of aluminum. So it's actually 2 pieces bolted together, and then some custom steel mounts that I fabricated. And then back here I also have a custom emblem that I designed. It's based off the normal Mustang logo, but it's a little bit more geometric. So I think that's kind of cool. I do actually have these for sale on my website if you're interested. This is 3D printed out of a nylon material and then painted and clear coated. And along with that, I made some other custom badges with my logo, and that just replaced the normal GT badges that is regularly on the front fenders. And then also inside, it is pretty stock. I did do a custom gauge pod in here. So I designed this gauge pod and also got it printed out of nylon. and it was actually dyed black to kind of match the interior. And that is to hold my SCT tuner, so that gives you real-time data. And then I have my air fuel and also my boost underneath that. So this completely replaced the radio, and I actually have a Bluetooth radio that is sitting over in the glove box, which is kind of nice because I never need to touch it anyway. I can just control everything from my phone. So that is the Mustang. Like I said, I did buy it from a junkyard, totally wrecked, and then I had to fix everything. So I bought it for about $3,000. I put another $3,500 in it just to get it back up and running. And then after that, it's basically the turbo kit and all of the wheels and tires, the air suspension. Those are the big things. The custom parts I built really don't cost that much money because it's just materials. So all in this car, I'd say I have about $14,000 invested. Now next up is the Z3. So this is my 1998 BMW Z3. It does have about 175,000 miles on it. I've owned this for just a little over a year now. And this was my second major project car that I did cover every detail here on my channel. So as you can see, the main thing was the wide body. I built these fenders out of sheet metal, and this was the first time I did anything like this. The Mustang, like I said, was stock fenders that I spaced out. So these were the first time I built my own fenders. And I did also build these splitters. So I have a front splitter and side splitters. And I thought that was pretty important to make the wide body look correct and look like it belonged on the car. Some say the wide body is a little too sharp for the car, but that's exactly what I was going for because I think that this car was a little too smooth and curvy to begin with. So I wanted to add those sharp features to give it more of an aggressive look. And so then of course I also have wheels and tires on this thing. So these I kept with the 16s. So these are 16x9s with really meaty tires, which I like. I do not like the really thin sidewall tires. I like to have plenty of width and sidewall. And of course I do have coilovers on this. I didn't go with air. So that's why it is a little bit higher, just so that it is functional. It kind of looks like the tires are pretty close to hitting, but honestly it doesn't. I made sure that I built the fenders in such a way that when the tires come up, it does miss. Of course, if you go crazy and hit some huge bumps, you might get some rubbing, but generally it does not rub. And so now this car does have the same exact engine as the E46 over there. It's the 2.8 liter M52, but it does feel so much faster, even though it's only about 200 or 300 pounds lighter than the E46. But it just seems to be way faster. I don't know if the engine is just a little more healthy or if that weight does make that much difference. So it's definitely not slow, but next up for this car, I do want to start adding some more power. So that's the Z3. Like I said, this does have a little bit higher mileage, so I was able to pick this up for only $4,000. And then the main expenses are the wheels and tires and suspension. I have about another $3,000 in it. So total invested in this car is $7,000. And now, just to keep you waiting a little bit longer, I'll go over my go-kart and my four-wheeler. So this go-kart is a Tau Aero 200. I did do a full assembly video on this. This was about a year ago. Pretty solid go-kart. It's lacking in power for sure. And I think the suspension needs a lot more travel and just better suspension in general. So this was bought as just kind of for fun, and I want to eventually kind of rebuild it, add a better engine, probably redo all of the suspension. But now it's just for fun. It's nice to take some people around the house, and it's actually pretty useful to bring my chainsaw and some other stuff around to cut up some wood. And so this thing cost about $2,500. Next is my four-wheeler here. This is the Yamaha Raptor 660R. It is a 2003. When I bought it, it did have a few issues that I had to sort through, but now it is running pretty well. And since it did have those problems, I was able to pick it up pretty cheap for $1,500, and I'd probably put another $500 in it, so I have a little over $2,000 invested. All right, now looking at all the cars I just went through, these are all great cars, but I really only have the E46 to use as a day-to-day car. You know, the Jeep really isn't set up for that with the big tires and lift, and these two are my nicer project cars that I don't want to be driving all the time, and especially in bad weather. So now I wanted to get something that I could use day to day that is a little bit nicer and not so boring as the E46. I've also always been really interested in fast SUVs. So I've been looking for a really long time for a few different vehicles, and actually the one I ended up purchasing, I'd only recently gotten interested in because it is a little bit more rare. You don't see them as much, so it wasn't even really on my radar. So with all that said, I present my new purchase. Here it is. It is a 2011 Range Rover Sport Supercharged. I've owned this now for only a few weeks. It has 108,000 miles on it. So like I said, it is the supercharged version. So it is a 5.0 liter V8 with a supercharger. It makes 510 horsepower. I think around 460 foot-pounds of torque. So now you might wonder why the heck I went with this vehicle. It really checked all the boxes I was looking for. It's definitely way nicer than the E46. It will be really good for a day-to-day if I want to. Of course, not great gas mileage with the V8. And then it will work really well for trips. It has a lot of room inside. And definitely a lot more comfortable than my other cars since most of them are just coupes. And of course, this checks the box of being a pretty fast SUV, being over 500 horsepower. And you might be saying, oh my gosh, Land Rover reliability issues. As far as my research goes, this seems to be one of the more reliable body styles. Before 2010, like the 2005 to 2009, it was more based on the X5, so it had a lot more of those BMW problems that I mentioned before. So this model went back to being more built by Jaguar, so it does seem to be a little bit more reliable. With that said, I basically bought this broken, so it does come standard with air suspension, and that was not working at all correctly when I bought it. So when I actually drove it home, it was completely bottomed out for a good portion of the drive, which was horrible on the highway. You hit a bump and you just get completely ruined because it was basically on the bump stops. And so I have already replaced the front airbags, and that didn't completely solve the problem. So I then went ahead and replaced the front air block. And so that's a valve block that distributes the air from the compressor to the front bags. And I knew it was a front problem because I would come out, you know, overnight, it would be completely dropped in the front. And even after I replaced the bags, it was dropping even faster. So I did open up that valve block and I saw a pinched O-ring and then some corroded contacts on the solenoid valve. So that made me believe that it was the valve block. And so now we are in much better shape. It does still have a suspension fault, so it may need a new compressor, but for now it is holding air in all the bags. And so it's at least much more drivable than it was when I first bought it. And as far as overall condition, it's really in pretty good shape. If you get close, you'll see a bunch of these marks where someone was just pretty careless. You see here and here. Most of these are paint that is on top of the factory paint. So I believe most of this will buff out with some effort. The same with all of this here. So it just seems like someone was a little careless. Also, you can see that with the wheels. They look horribly curbed, and they kind of are, but it looks way worse because they were plasti dipped. And then whenever someone curbed it, it basically peeled all the plasti dip off. So it just looks 100 times worse right now. So I will definitely be peeling all of that plasti dip off. I completely hate plasti dip because you might as well just paint your wheels, because if you don't put it on perfectly and thick in all areas, it just takes forever to peel off. So I'll try to get all that off and see what it looks like with the factory silver color. I may end up repainting them gloss black, not completely sure yet, but for now just clean it up. But yeah, like I said, the body is really straight. Again, someone just scuffed up against something, and that is paint that is sitting on top. So most of that will really clean up pretty well. But otherwise, the paint seems to be in really good condition. No big dents really anywhere. And underneath, I have had it on the lift, of course, and underneath there is some rust. It's not horrible, but this car does have kind of more of a traditional frame underneath. I will be wire wheeling all that off and then using a specific paint that is meant to go on rusted surfaces. This car was bought from upstate New York, and it spent some time in Connecticut, so it has been exposed to some salt. But like I said, nothing I can't handle and repair now so it doesn't become worse. And so when I bought this, it was really just dirty. It didn't actually have any huge problems, especially on the inside. So I went ahead and cleaned everything up. So it's now looking pretty good. Everything seems to work the way it should on the inside. and you know, no big tears or anything on the interior. It just needed a really good deep clean. So now it's looking pretty much the way it should. So I'm happy with that because, again, the whole point of this car was to have something a little bit nicer to ride around in, a little bit more comfortable inside and better for trips. So I didn't want to get something that the interior was totally trashed. So that is the new purchase. I was able to pick it up for $10,000. That is a good bit below market value because it did have all those issues with the suspension. Normally with these things in good condition, they're listed anywhere from like $16,000 up to like $22,000 or $25,000. So I didn't feel too bad picking it up for $10,000. Now you might wonder what's the plan with this thing. I'm not gonna go too crazy, but I know right off the bat I'm gonna be doing exhaust. So this thing is way too quiet from the factory. It's crazy to have 500 horsepower and you really can't hear it at all. It has two huge resonators in the middle of the car, and then each of these rear tips has a muffler as well. So we are going to be getting rid of pretty much all of that. That's going to be the first thing. I already have all the parts right there. I will likely start on that today. And also, once I get that old exhaust off, that will give me a great opportunity to clean up all that rust. I'll have more access to everything underneath, so I can do all that at the same time. And then from there, I just want to make sure everything is functioning the way it should, try to get rid of any faults that are on the dash. I'm thinking I'll probably get wheels and tires at some point. These wheels are okay, but I think something with a better style, and I would like to get some thicker, meatier tires. These just look a little bit small for the car. And so like I said, I picked it up for $10,000. I already have about $1,000 invested, so total is $11,000 on this. And now combine that with all the other cars, I have about $43,000 total invested. That might sound like a lot, but for 5 cars, I don't think that's too bad, since I know a lot of people that spend just that much on one car. And I really like having such diversity in the cars because they all have a different use for me. And I just would much rather have this kind of a setup than just be limited to putting all my money into one vehicle. So that is going to be it for today, but like I said, next time we're going to get right to work on the new Range Rover. Let me know what you think of this purchase. It's a little out of ordinary compared to the other cars, but it just made sense for what I was looking for. So let me know if you think I made a good decision.